go, and whither thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. And Hopkins paused, and then he said, even to the end. And Churchill wept. And that was right at the most difficult, hardest, most poignant moment of our relations this century. And so it's easy to see why, for anyone from Britain proud enough to be British Prime Minister who comes here, we feel that sense of our common history. But what binds us together, you know, is more than our history, and it's greater than our language, and it's deeper than our mutual self-interest. It is a genuine, shared understanding of what drives and motivates the human spirit, the striving to do and to be better, the great values of freedom and progress and justice that are the values that have motivated the best in my country throughout the ages and motivate the best in America today. And when we look around our world and we see that crises are no longer confined to one nation, a national crisis becomes an international crisis, when we see that global economic change drives through forces of difficulty for people that they've never contemplated before, and when we see the social change that comes in the wake of that economic change, then those shared values are more important than ever before, and that shared understanding more vital to our future than ever before. Because there are no problems that are solved simply by nations alone today. There are problems that face us all and must be solved by us as nations together. So our relationship, the relationship between Britain and America, yes, it is a relationship founded on a magnificent past, but it is a relationship today every bit as... Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be here in the United States of America. I am proud to offer you the good wishes of my countrymen and women back home, and it gives me enormous pleasure to propose a toast to the President of the United States and to the First Lady.
First, let me say that it's been a real pleasure to welcome my friend, Prime Minister Blair, here to Washington with the entire British entourage. It continues a great tradition of partnership between our nations, anchored by common values, driven by common vision, eager to meet the challenges of this new age. Today we'll pay tribute to that heritage with a visit to the FDR Memorial. Earlier in this century, President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill led the community of free nations that prevailed in World War. Now, on the eve of the 21st century, the Prime Minister and I seek to shape the peace in a world that is rich with possibility and promise, but still not free from risk. We have a very similar outlook on preparing our own countries for the future. And if I might just take a moment to talk about the latest economic news. The strategy we are both working is to prepare all our people for the information age in the global economy. Today, we have new evidence that that strategy is working here. In the last month, America had 358,000 new jobs, over 1 million in the last 3 months. We're approaching 15 million new jobs in the last 5 years, with the lowest unemployment in 24 years. Wages are rising, inflation is low. The role of government has changed. We have the smallest percentage of these new jobs in the public sector and the highest percentage in the private sector in the United States since the 1920s. By maintaining fiscal discipline, opening more markets, investing more in our people, we will continue to expand opportunity and promote prosperity. We also share a common view of the changes that are occurring in the world and a belief in the importance of working together to harness them to the benefit of our people. We've reviewed our progress in building an undivided Europe, welcoming Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Poland into NATO, forging strong relations with the new democracies there, including Russia and Ukraine, helping the parties in Bosnia to fulfill the requirements of the Dayton Peace Accord. Both our nations agree we should take part in a follow-on security presence when the S-4 mission ends in Bosnia in June. We reaffirmed our determination to combat modern cross-border threats like terrorism and the spread of weapons of mass destruction. On Iraq, we stand together. Saddam Hussein must know that we are determined to prevent him from threatening his neighbors and the world with weapons of mass destruction. The Prime Minister and I would both prefer a genuine diplomatic solution. The best way to stop Saddam from developing an arsenal of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons and the missiles to deliver them is to get the inspectors back to work with full and free access to all relevant sites. But let me be clear, if Saddam does not comply with the unanimous will of the international community, we must be prepared to act, and we are. On Libya, 10 years later, we haven't forgotten the victims of the bombing of Pan Am 103 in the skies over Lockerbie, Scotland, or their loved ones. We will not rest until Libya complies with the requirements of the world community and surrenders for trial in the United States or Scotland the 2 Libyans accused of that brutal crime. We addressed our commitment to advance the cause of peace, and I welcome Britain's efforts as President of the European Union to spur greater cooperation in the Middle East peace process. I also commend the Prime Minister for his courageous steps in cooperation with the Irish government to promote a climate of confidence and hope in Northern Ireland. The multi-party talks provide the best chance for a real solution to that conflict. I urge all the parties to show the vision and the forbearance and the determination to succeed. I unequivocally condemn this recent sectarian killings and beatings and threats. Nothing worth having in Northern Ireland can be accomplished through violence. I told the Prime Minister that we will continue to do all we can to advance the cause of peace, and of course I asked for and received his advice in that regard. The recent financial crisis in Asia demands action from the international community. On our increasingly interconnected planet, trouble in the far end of town can easily become a plague in our own neighborhood. We agree that every affected nation must take responsibility for implementing tough reforms, and that other nations, when they do that, when those nations that are affected do their part, other nations should support helping them through the International Monetary Fund. We also looked at ways that we could work together to benefit our people at home. As President of both the European Union and the G7, the United Kingdom will host 2 important summits in Birmingham this May. The Prime Minister has told me he wants to take these summits to take action that really will make a difference in our people's daily lives, that lift their horizons and their dreams, stepping up to our efforts to combat drug traffickers and helping every child to grow up in a safe community. Shielding our planet from the threat of global warming and bringing our people the benefits of a growing economy and a clean environment are important to us as well. It's also important that we give our people the tools to make the most of their lives through world-class education and training, help people to move from welfare to work, and I applaud the efforts that the Prime Minister is making on that. Give them access to the wonders of the information age. That's something we talked about yesterday at the Montgomery Blair High School in Maryland. And dealing with the question of how to provide greater security in retirement years when the baby boom generation retires. We finally know that our 2 nations must continue to work and to lead the world for security, prosperity, and peace. In 1942, in the midst of the Second World War, President Roosevelt sent a message to Mr. Churchill that said as follows: "When victory comes, we shall stand shoulder to shoulder in seeking to nourish the great ideals for which we fight." Today, on the verge of a new century and a new millennium, that prediction has proved right. America is proud to stand with the United Kingdom and with Europe, and to work with its leader, Prime Minister Tony Blair, to build an even brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. And can I begin by saying how grateful we have been for such a wonderful and warm welcome here in the United States of America. As the President has just indicated, we discussed obviously a range of different topics. Top of the list, of course, was the situation in respect of Iraq. And what we agreed was that we had to do three things in particular. We had, first of all, to make sure that our own public opinion was properly educated as to why it is so essential that the UN inspectors are able to do their work. The amount of weapons that they have already uncovered in the 6 or 7 years that they have been doing this task, and why it is therefore absolutely essential that Saddam Hussein is brought back into line with UN Security Council resolutions and the inspectors can go about their task unhindered. We ourselves, a couple of days ago in Britain, published a document where we listed precisely all the various weapon finds the inspectors had made. And when you go through that list and see all the various attempts there have been to try and prevent the inspectors carrying out their functions, then I think people can understand why it is so necessary, so important for us to be prepared to take whatever action is necessary to ensure those inspectors can go back in and fulfill their task. Secondly, though, in relation to Iraq, it is important that we stress all the time, of course we want a diplomatic solution, but it must be a diplomatic solution based on and fully consistent with the principles that we have set out. The question of whether there is such a diplomatic solution rests ultimately with Saddam Hussein. He has the choice. He can bring himself back into compliance with the agreements he entered into, and then that diplomatic solution can be fulfilled. Thirdly, however, we have, of course, to prepare in case diplomacy cannot work. In view of the situation, we in Britain have been looking at our own military readiness in case a diplomatic solution does not in the end prove possible. We have decided to base 8 Tornado GR-1 aircraft in Kuwait with the full agreement of the government of Kuwait. These are ground attack and reconnaissance aircraft. Their deployment is a precautionary measure and it will take place over the next few days. So all the way through, in respect of Iraq, we have agreed that we must educate, we must engage in diplomacy, but we also must prepare. In respect of Ireland, I want to place on record yet again my thanks to the President for all the support he has given us in searching for a lasting and peaceful political settlement in Ireland.